Now, from 94 to 96, the refugee camps in the Congo that have some 1.5 million people in them fall under control of the Hutu militias that have fled the country. In 96, the RPF invades and attacks refugee camps in the Congo. Somewhere between 50 and 150,000 people are killed. The model you might want to have in your mind here is Srebrenica. But there, some 2,000 people were killed. Here, 50 to 150,000. But in both instances, the UN was there. In July of 1996, there is a coup in Burundi. Buyoya, this is a guy that was a Tutsi that had previously tried to take control 10 years earlier, finally managed to succeed. The Tutsi restoration in Central Africa is now complete. We have returned back to a full cycle to the Rabugiri military political consolidation of the mid-19th century. From 1998 to 2000, the RPF gains control of the eastern Congo, all the way to Kisangani, or what is formerly known as Stanleyville. This is the last navigable point on the river coming up from the Atlantic Ocean. As the crow flies, Kisangani is 470 miles from Kigali. By the roads, it's about 800 miles. We interviewed the defense minister and the Solicitor General of the Rwandan Supreme Court, and Christian and I asked these guys, what are you guys doing in Kisangani? It's kind of far. It's sort of like going from Washington, D.C. to St. Louis. And he said, well, we have security concerns. There are Hutu militias in the jungle. And we said, yeah, we went there, and we saw them. But you don't have to go to Kisangani to find them. They're 5 miles over the border. So why are you guys 500 miles into the Congo? And there's this long pause, and the Solicitor General is the guy that really lost it. And he says to me, I went to the University of Chicago. I have a master's degree in international relations. I've read Hans Morgenthau. I'm a realist. I know that the United States doesn't give a shit about what we do in this country, in this part of the world. We're going to do what we think we need to do to guarantee our security and wealth. To his words. Christian and I looked at each other. Christian just shaking his head like, I can't believe you just got this man to swear at you. And I was like, wow, this is great. I can't believe this guy just admitted to occupying the eastern third of Africa to enrich him and his buddies. Now, how does all this go down? Well, there's essentially 4 principal ethnic groups. There's another one, the Twa. They make up about 0.2 or 1% of the population. We can safely ignore them, not because they're not a good, decent people, but because they don't have much power here. Amongst the Hutu, there are essentially 2 groups. There's the Hutu Power Party, linked very closely to the Interahamwe, which is a sort of catch-all phrase for bad guys. Some of them are organized into militias. Some of them are gangs of young kids, but they're bad guys. Then there are the Hutu moderates, led by Habyarimana. The difference between the Hutu Power Party and the Hutu moderates is that the Hutu Power Party lost the election, and they want to get back in power. The reason why Habyarimana is moderate is because moderation is working for him. He's got a good deal with the UN through the Arusha Accords. He gets to be president. And he gets an election that if he can figure out how to fix the election, he'll get to stay president too. So there's no need to be anything other than moderate at the time. Now, the Tutsi there are basically 2 groups also. There are the Tutsi in Rwanda. Their elite, as they are Francophone. And there are the Tutsi expatriates in Uganda. They are Anglophone. Now, the Hutu extremists and the Tutsi expatriates both prefer no power sharing. They want 100% control of the country. Now, the Hutu moderates and the Tutsi in Rwanda, they're willing to accept the Arusha Accords. These guys, the Francophone Tutsi, they think this is the coolest thing that's ever happened. These were essentially the Tutsi that were the not elite Tutsi. All the elite Tutsi left in the late 50s and early 60s. These are the folks that got left behind. Now, all of a sudden, the Arusha Accords come along and actually guarantee them something, which they think is pretty awesome. Now, what happens is the Hutu extremists bet wrong. They thought that these 2 Tutsi groups would have the same preference. They actually believed that if they started to kill off these people, that the Tutsi expatriates from Uganda would care. It turned out they were wrong.
Samantha, the power story is that, basically like the Ann Arbor Police Department could have intervened and stopped this thing. I mean, is that without too much resource expended by a modern Western army, we could try and crack this down pretty quick.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So this was what motivated me to get involved in this. My military experience, I spent 3 years in the United States Special Forces. I then spent 10 years in the Army Reserves as an armor officer. One of the things that we did when I was in the Special Forces, we would actually plan for, sit down and draw up detailed plans for how to go into a place and either take control of indigenous troops or stop them from doing what they're doing. And so the thing that I wanted to do was to say, well, is this true or not? How hard would it have been? So what we did was, Christian and I went to a bunch of locations where there were large-scale killings, where 25,000 or more people died. And so we wanted to see how hard would it have been to defend those places if we sent, say, a squad of American Marines or members from the 82nd Airborne. And it turns out most of the places where the large-scale mass killings took place, not all, but most of them, are in fact on open, exposed hilltops with a single road approach to the hilltop. If you've ever been to the West Bank, kind of open, rolling terrain, long sight lines. So we concluded, well, it certainly wouldn't have taken very many people. It's a very small country. Black Hawk helicopter can carry 14 guys in their gear. So basically one helicopter load probably would have been, maybe two, would have been enough to secure many of the places where between 5 and 40,000 people were murdered. The problem was, and the United States had troops available to do this. There's a Marine unit in Djibouti that was ready to roll. 3,000 Marines. Kagame said he'd shoot on them. And that was the point at which the American president said, we're not doing this. This is crazy. Because the American people, post-Somalia, have no stomach for American troops being fired at while we're trying to do the right thing. And so we did nothing. I don't think there's any question that within 6 days of this starting, people in the government in Germany, Britain, France, Belgium, and the United States all were aware of what was going down and how this was going to play out. The CIA's estimate before the plane is shot down is that between 75 and 150,000 people are going to be killed in the violence that they think is coming. So, they're off by a few hundred thousand, but they basically knew this was going to happen. And they made a choice not to do it. Now, the question then becomes, was that the right thing to do?